Good day, everyone. I am Alma Rodrigo, your reporter at this moment. In my report, I will be discussing 4 topics: the animal production, aquaculture, fish culture, and organic agriculture. So now, let us tackle first the animal production. What is animal production? Animal production is the production of animal goods, such as meat, dairy, wool, and leather. Animal production is a multi-billion-dollar per year industry and accounts for over half of the value of U.S. agricultural products. Further, livestock products supply about 13% of energy and 28% of protein in diets consumed worldwide. Technological advances and the development of science-based management practices and standards have enabled the U.S. to make vast strides in the efficient and economical generation of higher quality animal foods and fiber products. Major and common types of animal production. Dairy farming. Dairy farming is the agricultural technique concerned with the long-term production of milk, which is then processed to obtain dairy products such as curd, cheese, yogurt, butter, cream, and more. It involves the management of dairy animals such as cows, buffalo, sheep, and goats. The animals are taken care of against diseases and are inspected regularly by veterinary doctors. A healthy animal is physically, mentally, and socially sound. These animals are milked by hand or by machines. The milk is preserved and then converted into dairy products industrially, which are then used for commercial purposes. Poultry farming. Poultry farming is concerned with raising and breeding of birds for commercial purposes. Birds like ducks, chickens, geese, pigeons, turkeys, and more are domesticated for eggs and meat. It is very important to take care of the animals and maintain them in a disease-free environment to obtain healthy food from them. The eggs and meat are a rich source of protein. Sanitation and hygienic conditions need to be maintained. The feces of birds are used as manure to improve soil fertility. Poultry farming provides employment to a large number of people and helps in improving the economy of the farmers. Meat. Meat mainly from farm animals is a major source of dietary protein around the world, averaging about 8% of man's energy intake. The actual types eaten depend on local preferences, availability, cost, and other factors, with cattle, sheep, pigs, and goats being the main species involved. About half of the world's meat is produced from animals grazing on open ranges or on enclosed pastures, the other half being produced intensively in various factory farming systems. These are mostly cows, pigs, or poultry, and often reared indoors, typically at high densities. Fleece. Common fleece-producing animals are sheep, goats, llamas, and alpacas. Below are their common products. Leather. When the milk production of cows in the dairy industry declines, their skin is made into leather. Thus, dairy farms is directly linked to the sale of leather goods. Most leather produced and sold in the U.S. is made from the skins of cattle and calves, but leather is also made from sheep, lambs, goats, and pigs. Other species are hunted and killed specifically for their skins, including zebras, kangaroos, elephants, crocodiles, alligators, ostriches, lizards, and snakes. Animal production also includes aquaculture or aqua farming and insects such as beekeeping and sericulture. The importance of animal production. To meet projected demand for animal products, the industry must streamline production and advance capacity to prevent, detect, diagnose, and treat animal diseases. The health and quality of livestock is influenced by genetics, care, nutrition, and environment. The quality of animal products is affected by production methods and marketing practices. Thus, scientists study the conditions in which animals are raised, as well as how animal products are manufactured and marketed in order to produce good quality of life for animals, healthy livestock that reach full production potential, and a nutritious and safe food supply. Summary of global trends in animal production. Animal production has increased worldwide in the past 50 years. We can see that in top picture. Long-term trends in animal production are most easily recognized if developed and developing countries are viewed separately. Greater intensification of animal production initially occurred in developed countries because calories from animal protein cost more to produce than calories from crops. However, as poorer countries develop and disposable income increases, the population can more easily afford animal protein, and there is a corresponding increase in animal production. In fact, intensification of animal production over the last 5 decades was dominated by developing countries. During the last 2 decades, animal production in most developed countries increased or leveled off, while production in developing countries continued to increase rapidly. Global production of major animal types within major geographic regions and for developed and developing countries. Consumption of animal products such as meat, milk, and eggs in developing countries is projected to increase over the next several decades, with a concomitant increase in livestock inventories, particularly poultry, beef, and sheep production. However, expansion of global livestock production is expected to be slower in both developing and developed countries than in past years due to higher input costs and increased competition for resources critical to animal production systems such as land and water. Increased regulation in animal production and manure management may also work to slow the growth of global livestock production, mainly in developing countries. Modern agriculture remains highly globalized and industrialized. Major shifts in the nature of animal production over the last several decades have increased the distance that animal feed and animal products travel between sites of production and consumption. These trends have also resulted in marked increases in the geographic intensity of animal production in many countries, with more animals being grown in confinement of farms that are located in close proximity to each other and that have the same or declining amounts of cropland available for manure use. The change in the inventory of cattle and calves, hogs and pigs in the U.S. from 2007 to 2012. Dark brown symbolize significant decrease. In developing countries, animal production is generally not as intensive, but animal confinement is expected to increase in developing countries over the next decade, especially for pigs and poultry. As these countries continue to develop, their production systems will inevitably become more intensive for the same economic reasons that promote this trend in developed countries. Mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions in the production of fluid milk. Animal production and milk production include the care of cows and calves, animals sold or animals sold for meat, animals maintained off the farm, type of management system and number and breed of animals, type of animal housing, manure handling, milking parlor operations, and milk storage on the farm. Resource inputs include fuel, electricity, water, machinery, and packaging material. Because dairy cows or calves are culled for meat production, 4 different methods to allocate the environmental emissions at the farm and outside the boundary of the fluid milk supply chain may be used. The allocation method assumes, first, no allocation is used and only milk production impacts the environment. Second, economic allocation assumes that emissions follow the yearly income derived from milk production and animals sold for meat production. Third, cost-effect physical allocation to account for the impact of the dairy cow's feed mix on milk production, calves, and meat. And fourth, system expansion is used to expand the milk production system to include meat production. Allocation methods may also be used if the milk is transported not only to fluid milk plants but also to plants processing other dairy products. Ethics of meat production and its relation to perceived meat quality. Meat animal production has changed considerably from the initial domestication of livestock until the Industrial Revolution, which resulted in the Livestock Revolution. Consumer criticisms about meat animal production has resulted in the introduction of quality standards, codes of practices, and certification programs which enable the global meat industry to better address some of the hostile consumer perceptions regarding meat production and quality and ensure economical and environmentally sustainable production system. Although the world is currently faced with the dilemmas of poverty, high urbanization rates, and poor food distribution, predictions are that food scarcity is on the horizon due to the rapidly increasing human population, which may signify the next major global predicament. This moral dilemma far outweighs much of the culture-based ethical principles, although issues relating to food safety and quality are fixed. Although there is a great emphasis on environmentally sustainable and ethically acceptable meat animal production, which can only be achieved by vertical integration of production systems, the use of unconventional species, and the responsible exploitation of modern production-enhancing technologies, the use of such technologies will be the cause of considerable debate, although there are few other alternatives given the unavailability of more agricultural land and natural resources. Are we our own worst enemy? Carbon dioxide emissions from pastured animals. Kuniswaran and Nirenberg state that regarded as the most important greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide has the most significant direct warming impact in global temperature because of the sheer volume of its emissions. Of all the natural and human-induced influences on climate over the past 250 years, the largest is due to increased carbon dioxide concentrations attributed to burning fossil fuels and deforestation. The animal agriculture sector accounts for about 9% of total carbon dioxide emissions, which are primarily the result of fertilizer production for feed crops, on-farm energy expenditures, feed transport, animal product processing and transport, and land use changes. Burning fossil fuels to produce fertilizers for feed crops may emit 41 million metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. Vast amounts of artificial nitrogenous fertilizer are used to grow farm animal feed, primarily composed of corn and soybeans. Most of this fertilizer is produced in factories dependent on fossil fuel energy. The Haber-Bosch process, which produces ammonia in order to create nitrogen-based artificial fertilizer, is used to produce 100 million metric tons of fertilizer for feed crops annually. Philippines animal husbandry. In the Philippines, the carabao or water buffalo are the principal draft animals, particularly in the rice paddies. Hogs are the chief meat animals. The Philippines is self-sufficient in pork and poultry, but imports of beef and dairy products are still necessary. In 2001, there were 11 million hogs, 6.2 million goats, 3 million buffaloes, and 2.5 million head of cattle, and 116 million chickens. The livestock and poultry sector each contribute about 13% of the total value of the agricultural production. In 2001, exports of livestock, meat, and skins were valued at $6.8 million. The present and the future of animal agriculture in the Philippines. 2017, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations forecast an increase in food demand from 59% to 98% by 2050. Therefore, both big and small-scale farmers must adjust their production, causing an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. The Philippine Statistics Authority's January to March 2019 brief reported a massive surge in the commercial inventory of cattle, swine or pig, and chicken. Surprisingly, their combined increase of 13.39 was still not enough to sustain the Philippines' population of 108.12 million. Proof is that the undernutrition rate amongst children aged 0 to 5. Government support. President Ferdinand Marcos implemented Presidential Decree No. 914 or the Protection and Creation of Powers for the Livestock Development Council under the Department of Agriculture. Senate Bill No. 1758 an effort to reconstruct the current industry while still supporting an already crippled food system is still pending for approval. Senator Sencha Villar's bill proposes to rethink livestock development and focus efforts on Filipino farmers. Unfortunately, this bill did not provide avenues for small-scale farmers to have access to the capital. Instead, it focused on improving pre-existing infrastructure without addressing how to reduce the risk of investing in agriculture. Sustainable food systems approach. This approach considers how to adjust food production according to population growth, urbanization, changing consumer patterns, and climate change, all of which are not considered in the slightest in current animal agriculture practices. A sustainable food system approach has three main components: economic, social, and environmental impact. Achieving a successful integration between these three will provide a fiscally viable equal distribution of sustainably grown nutritious food. The animal agriculture industry is challenged by unbridled globalization. Our policymakers have forgone self-sufficiency and have reverted to dependency. First, the feed used to sustain these animals is imported. Second, land used to breed these animals are loaned. Third, these breeders are often uneducated and lack proper government or private support. Financing institutions lend or borrow capital at such ungodly rates that ultimately deplete these farmers' profit margins. Fourth, there is no research and development in finding alternatives to address the gap between the producer and consumer. While meat alternatives is not a popular topic to consider, at our current fertility rate, we need all possible solutions to address this looming crisis.